Alrighty then. Hey everybody, California Republican here. Just had needed to input my audio capture into the streaming service. Still getting used to everything, but I am the California Republican. This is episode 2, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin versus Santa Monica, California. From a political sense more than anything. Now, what's interesting is, as I even say the names of those cities, Oconomowoc, when I was growing up there, sounded completely normal. The city name of Oconomowoc. Wisconsin has a lot of Native American style names. If you recall Wayne's World, when Atlas Cooper was there talking to Wayne and Garth, and he talks about Milwaukee, and there's kind of a little bit of banter back and forth there. Oconomowoc or Waukesha or Ashapin, that all sounded normal. And this was, I'm 34 years old, so let's say this was 24 years ago, me growing up there. This was right before everybody had a cell phone, right before Facebook came out, and there wasn't this globalization of information that we currently see now. So it was just all of us sort of living in our own world, and who knows, maybe, I travel there once a year. I try to see friends. I generally see family when I'm there. And it's interesting to see that they have started to come out of their shell, but you still are somewhat a product of your surroundings and your environment, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's interesting that growing up, Oconomowoc sounded normal, and then a name like Santa Monica or Los Angeles, the more Hispanic names, just were totally like, that sounds kind of weird. And now that I'm living out here in Santa Monica, right out the gate, Oconomowoc, having not lived there for over 10 years at this point, about 10 years or give or take, now Oconomowoc sounds kind of weird, and anytime I bring it up, I'm from Wisconsin, or I say I'm from Chicago because I spent a couple of years there as well in the city, but when I say Oconomowoc, they're like, Ocono what? And I say, well, there was this story that we had heard as children. The name Oconomowoc comes because as we were settling the land hundreds of years ago, however long it was, we eventually stopped at a certain point in what is today Wisconsin, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and it was, I believe, a Native American that had stopped, and he said, I can no more walk. I can no more walk. Oconomowoc. Probably the lamest dad-style joke you've ever heard, but anyways, it is what it is. So I had the idea for this episode of contrasting where I grew up and where I live today, and sort of getting a little bit into the genesis of what I consider to be a California Republican. So this is something I've been wanting to do, so we can just jump into it. I have a couple different websites and statistics that I want to do, almost a side-by-side comparison, but we'll be flipping back and forth. So as of today, political statistics in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, the Democrat percentage is 36%, and the Republican percentage is 62%. Independent one, we won't really be focusing on independent much at all. But what you're going to notice as I go over to so before I move over, we're looking at about 1/3 of the population is Democrat, and about 2/3 of the population is Republican. Now, these are today's, I wasn't able to find our voting records in 2018, so give or take, so that was the mid-year elections while Trump was still in office after 2016 to 2018. So I couldn't find from when I was growing up, like 2004, although we will get into that, and that's sort of where we contrast. But as far as right now, 1/3 Democrat, 2/3 Republican. Now let's take a look at Santa Monica today. Almost the reverse. So Santa Monica, California, Democrat percentages, 69% registered as a Democrat in 2018. Republicans, 28%. So the numbers are just about the reverse, although it does appear that Oconomowoc has a slightly higher Democrat percentage than Santa Monica does Republican. And looks like the reverse is true for the other parties as well. So basically, you can see it as Santa Monica has roughly 1/3 Republican, 2/3 Democrat, which is extremely interesting. Actually, they're both interesting because growing up in Oconomowoc, the schools that I went to, and I wasn't political at all my entire life until Trump came into office. I don't know why that happened. I think it's because it was the first guy that wasn't somebody that was boring, that you'd, assume was speaking on C-SPAN and all these sorts of aspects that meant nothing to your life. And then Trump comes along, and on one hand, he's very entertaining and he talks off the cuff, and he will say things that essentially no politician, at least in the United States, really even came close to saying before. Just the sorts of, I guess they kind of try to say locker room humor when it comes to some of the things he says, but just being like, I know I know people that are successful, people that are Republican, people that live out here, people that have worked really hard to become at a high level in different aspects of their life, and they act more like a Trump than they do a Biden when it comes to their personality. But regardless, it's very interesting that, so I grew up in schools where they just offhandedly would teach you, oh, well, big government is not what we want. And that's really, I don't remember much about school. I don't remember much about any of my school, even through high school and the little bit of college that I had. But I do just remember just like sort of it was almost like subconscious or like sublingual, just like in the background, like, oh, by the way, big government is bad. And then they probably brought up reasons why, but I wasn't really paying attention in school. So I find it actually highly interesting that we had that high of a percentage as Democrats. I remember there was one election where back in the day when you would watch the local news channel, Fox or NBC or whatever, to your local region, and they would have the sort of the ticker at the bottom that was showing election results pouring in, and I could have sworn there was one election, I don't remember what year it was or what this, what we were specifically voting for, whether it was a mayor, governor, representatives, anything like that, or what year it was, but I could have sworn that Waukesha County, which is where I'm from, had like a 90% Republican turnout, something just like higher than almost any other. And Wisconsin has a blend just like probably most states, where you have your urban areas. In Wisconsin, that's going to be Milwaukee, Madison. I haven't spent too much time north, but you have Appleton and Green Bay. I'm not exactly sure what they're like. And then you have vast swaths of suburbia and rural Wisconsin, which I would assume, and we'll delve into this a little bit, are more Republican. And I think that's just, in general, what a lot of states are going to be like. Suburbia is going to go red for the most part, and of course these change over time. Cities are going to go left, are going to go blue for the most part. But to get back to the point, it's very interesting how I don't remember. I mean, again, I was not into politics at all, but there wasn't any Democrat action committees trying to do this or that I recall. I mean, even I remember when I was going to University of Wisconsin-Waukesha, which is sort of the local junior college that helps you get into the more main state universities like your UW-Madison, UW-Milwaukee, UW-La Crosse, Stevens Point, places like that. I was in the Future Republicans Club or something like that, and I don't remember a Future Democrats Club. Now, with all that being said, Wisconsin, or at least where I grew up in suburbia in Oconomowoc, I don't know how it is now, but demographic-wise, it was very homogenous. Growing up there, you didn't really know. It's actually interesting, too. I noticed this because when I moved out to California and I was working in the nightlife industry with my brother, when I grew up, and everybody around me looked like me, it didn't seem like I was anything special. Oh, I'm just another kid, another, white kid, another kid with blonde hair, whatever have you. I just kind of blended into what was going on. And then when you come out to a place like, specifically Hollywood and just LA in general, but I remember, when I was younger, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and I was going to the clubs, and all of a sudden, my appearance became more of an asset, which is very interesting. It almost makes you think that urban areas might be a little bit more prejudiced, racist, or stereotype than suburbia Republican communities. I wonder about that. Perhaps we should delve into that in a different episode. But going back to the original point, I don't recall like this number of 36%. And again, this is from today, and I haven't lived here in 10 years, but it is somewhat shocking. And then we move over to Santa Monica, and I'm almost equally as shocked at the Republican percentage in Santa Monica. Now, I think what's going on is I know plenty of, I don't know if closet Republicans is the best way to put it, but probably just people that keep their mouths shut out here. But 28%, I mean, I'm kind of astonished. Maybe, what I've noticed is, because I've lived in Hollywood, West Hollywood, Venice, and Santa Monica, and what I noticed is that if somebody stays in Los Angeles throughout the duration of their life, and let's just take average income earners, let's take out like people that are extremely wealthy or well off or anything like that, or on the opposite end, extremely poor, so just middle of the road, average Joe throughout their entire life, I see that the older people get in the LA area, they tend to move to more west than west towards the ocean. Things are a lot more calm out here in Santa Monica than they are in Hollywood or downtown or anything like that. The weather's going to be a little bit cooler. I would assume that that's better. I don't know, because you also hear people retire and go to like Florida. So it's cooler here. And unfortunately, one of the issues is because of our higher elderly population here, this is the one thing I missed about Hollywood. You will have people that just overall drive a lot slower for a good percentage, because they're, people that are over 60 or 70 years old driving some 1994 Oldsmobile Buick Lincoln Town Car, whatever. And with Santa Monica, because when we have basically 2-lane roads for the most part, unless you're on like a Olympic or a Santa Monica Boulevard, but for all like the cross streets, for the like vast majority, they are 2-lane roads. 1 lane going one way, 1 lane going the other. So if you get stuck behind a 1995 Oldsmobile Buick Lincoln Town Car, Genesis, Saturn, whatever, and they're going 5 to 10 miles per hour under the speed limit, you're kind of stuck. But in Hollywood, the most offensive driving I have ever seen. They see an opportunity, they go for it. And it was so nice and so choice. And every time I go to visit my brother in Hollywood, it is beautiful the way that they drive. You can just zip around because everybody else is zipping around and everyone's trying to get to where they're going. Fucking love it. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that it's at 30%. Not as shocked, and maybe it's because this is lower. This 28% is pretty lower than the 36%. Again, I'm still just astonished by that. But anyway, so grew up in Republican suburbia. Now I live in a liberal city, right? So that's where sort of the where I came from and where I am presently. And why do I live in Santa Monica? Well, part of it is just I ended up here. Another part is the weather, and a variety of other things. I started playing beach volleyball a couple of years ago, so I love going out there on the sand, and Santa Monica might be the biggest beach volleyball community in the entire world. Don't quote me on that, but it feels like it. Maybe one day I'll move down to Huntington Beach, which is the Republican capital of Southern California, or somewhere around there, Costa Mesa or something like that. But I know a lot of people here. I'm in groups and communities where, we're all here and I get to see these people every week. But we'll talk about that another time. So, we are looking at the Oconomowoc, Wisconsin political map. Democrat and Republican areas in Oconomowoc. Now, first of all, I don't know how much I believe this, because this is interesting, this upside down cross, that kind of scares me a little bit, but especially, it's more load interactive map. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. What's interesting here, first of all, we just went over those percentages. This doesn't look like 30% is Democrat, so I don't know if they're just piecemealing this map from a larger map. I'm not entirely sure. And we'll get, again, into the county versus the state versus the city here a little bit. But, and why I say this map doesn't make sense. You see all that blue? You see all that blue? You think that that's Democrat? No, those are lakes. Yeah, those are lakes. The city of lakes, land of lakes, I can't remember, we have some sort of connotation to either Oconomowoc, or it's like, they call it like lake country, where there's lakes everywhere, people got boats, people go and hang out by the lake, on the lake. That it's a big lake community out here. You got $1 million houses that are on the lake that, the equivalent in California would be several more $1 million, but because you're kind of just in this city of 10 to 20,000 people, it's going to be much less expensive. So let's take a look at what it says here. I was reading this before, and I'm not sure how much I agree with this, but Oconomowoc tends to be Republican based on voting results of recent elections. Compared to other nearby cities, Oconomowoc has more Democratic voters, which is still surprising. And maybe that's because Oconomowoc is starting to become a small city compared to its surroundings, where we have places like Neshota that you'll see here. It's actually not even a city, it's a village, but not a lot of people there. Or the town of Oconomowoc, not a lot of people there. Stonebank, not a lot of people there. Ashipin, not even incorporated. There's like less than 1,000 people. It's like in the hundreds that live there or something like that. So perhaps that's why, just because this is considered, Oconomowoc is considered a city by Waukesha County standards, that it's going to, quote-unquote, vote more Democratic than the surrounding cities. Compared to the nation as a whole, Oconomowoc leans more Republican. Highly educated populations with bachelor's degrees or higher tend to vote for more liberal candidates. Sure, and I've worked at UCLA Health, and I noticed the extreme biases, particularly, among everybody, obviously, but you also see it with a lot of doctors and researchers, MDs. In Oconomowoc, 46.97% of all adults have earned a bachelor's degree or higher. Educated women are far less likely to vote for conservatives, and in Oconomowoc, women make up 50% of the population. So educated women are far less likely to vote for conservatives. So I think that misses a key point, where there was a study done, and I don't have it for reference, unfortunately, but the single greatest factor of somebody switching parties, whether it is Democrat to Republican, anytime, the single biggest factor is when a woman has a child. And of course, that means she goes from Democrat to Republican, or voting liberal to voting conservative. It is the single biggest indicator of a change of political affiliation, is when a female has a child. And we can delve into that, and that kind of makes sense to a certain degree, but older Americans tend to vote more conservatively. Members of the boomer and silent generations more often vote for Republicans, while Gen X, okay, so they're kind of just going over general demographic voting populations here. More often vote for Republican, while Gen X and millennials and younger generations consistently support Democrats. We'll get into that in another episode. The median age in Oconomowoc is 45.4, which is older than the national median age of 38.1. Interesting, our national median age is 30, so we have more people that are, because I think median is different than average. I think median means we have more people that are that age versus any other age in the country. That's where sort of the top of the bell curve is. Is Oconomowoc a political battleground across all types of political contests in Oconomowoc, including state, local, and presidential elections? Races come within 5 percentage points 1% of the time. Okay, so yeah, with Oconomowoc, it's going Republican. Federal, local, and Wisconsin elections are weighed based on the recency of the election and the importance most voters assign to each seat. Okay, so that's Oconomowoc in a nutshell, according to bestneighborhood.org. And then we have Santa Monica. Isn't that nice? There we got that, red, blue, and again, this I feel like they're taking this, like maybe these maps are extrapolated from a larger map where they're just taking a county like Los Angeles County, and if it goes blue, then they're just going to paint the whole thing blue, which kind of negates the purpose of even having this map on this specific map on this specific web page to begin with. But I guess at an overall sense, the general sense is when you're in Oconomowoc, it does feel like this, and when you're in Santa Monica, it does feel like this. So we can go by that route. Map shows political leanings, same stuff from the other. Santa Monica tends to be very democratic based on voting results in recent elections compared to other nearby cities. Santa Monica has more Republican voters. That's interesting. Okay, well again, as we read before, older populaces tend to vote more conservative. That's it's no surprise there. And like I said before, Santa Monica has a more elderly population compared to, they're comparing this to nearby cities. So yeah, you compare us to Marina del Rey, West LA, Venice, places that we're surrounded by, maybe not Pacific Palisades. I'd actually like to see maybe the Palisades versus Santa Monica when it comes to their political demographics, because I would imagine Palisades particularly, which is part of the I believe they're part of the Palisades Malibu unified school district. I bet it's a very close split, and I think that would be a great idea for an episode to look at the split of how the Palisades and Malibu look when it comes to their voting populaces. I think that would be awesome to look at. But highly educated people, the bachelor, tend to vote more liberal. And again, so I don't like how it talks about, highly educated populations with bachelor degrees or higher tend to vote for more liberal candidates. So I think the best way that I can sum it up that I've noticed from listening to so many people talk about this issue is you have rich conservatives, average conservatives, and poor conservatives. You got rich Democrats, average Democrats, and poor Democrats. And that, a lot of the time, correlates to their education as well. Now, highly educated populations with bachelor's degrees, so what they're talking about is people that went to a college, which today colleges are bedrocks of liberal biasy. I remember when I was at Santa Monica College for 2 semesters, and during that time, I had 2 classes that really just kind of gave me this aha moment to say, fuck college at that time, and I haven't gone back since. I had a history class where they just taught mad shit about any white industrial titan, that it was just the most muckraking that I had ever seen. That was totally opposite to anything I was being taught in Wisconsin growing up or in the junior college. And then I also had a sociology class where I volunteered to help underprivileged communities go out and vote and all this sort of stuff. But what I noticed was the teacher, or I didn't even realize this, but the teacher, and I'll kind of tell you how it came to fruition, the teacher, looking back on it, was a huge hippie. And when he talked about bias, the only bias he talked about is Fox News being biased, and CNN and MSNBC are just the average centrist, blah, 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 blah. And he's teaching these kids that don't know shit. I was 24, 25, and I was probably one of the oldest people there, if not the oldest. Everyone else is 18, 19 years old. They don't know shit. So they listen to this motherfucker saying that Fox News is biased and all the other places are centrist. And it just kind of pisses me off now that I look back on it. But I took what he said, like, okay, Fox News is biased, shouldn't listen to Fox News, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm walking around, me and my brother, I think we went to go shopping at the Hollywood and Highland shopping center, and then we're walking back home. And I just said something like, I don't even know why I brought it up. I'm like, oh, you know, Fox News is like, apparently it's really biased or something. And without even blinking, without even thinking for a second, he was like, well, what about CNN and MSNBC? And for whatever reason, and we might have talked about it more that I don't remember, but that just like cracked sort of this idea. And then I think Trump got elected shortly thereafter, and that kind of solidified like, oh, the liberals will indoctrinate people and leave out, as Dave Chappelle calls it, key pieces of information. Or in my opinion, they fucking gaslight more than anything. I think that is the biggest character trait of people that are active in politics on the left-hand side. Just gaslighting to no degree. And when I have conversations with people on the left, you know, I live in Santa Monica, so that's most people, and I am always coming from a place of like, let me see how they believe, let me see how they think, let me see their rationale. Don't debate, don't interject, maybe throw some gas on the fire, but just kind of see where they sort of end up. And it's very, very liberal biased. So, highly educated populations with bachelor's degrees or higher tend to be more blah, blah, blah. Santa Monica has 66% of all adults have earned a bachelor's degree or higher. What does that compare to Oconomowoc? Yeah, Oconomowoc is 46.9%, okay. Educated women are far less blah, blah, blah. Santa Monica, about the same percentage. The median age in Santa Monica is 42.3, which is older than the national median age of 38.1. Man, that sounds young for a national median age. Is Santa Monica a political battleground? Across all types of political contests in Santa Monica, including state, local, and presidential elections, races come within 5 percentage points 7% of the time. So Oconomowoc is 1%, Santa Monica is 7%, still extremely low. Santa Monica is staying liberal. And that is all we have for these. Now, I promised that we would get into growing up in Wisconsin versus where I'm at now in Santa Monica. So I think, although this isn't the best example because John Kerry won, this is, I kind of wanted to go over the election that I was at in Wisconsin versus, you know, the election for 2020 when I was out here. So the 2004 United States presidential election in Wisconsin took place on November 2nd. Wisconsin was won by Democrat nominee John Kerry by a 0.38 margin of victory. Wow, that is insane. 0.38. And I was too young. I mean, I don't know. I was born in 85, 95. I was 19 years old. No. I was born in 88. So yeah, I was like 14, 15 years old. Prior to the election, most New Englanders considered the state to be a toss-up, or a crucial swing state, and faced similar political scrutiny to neighboring Michigan, Minnesota, and Iowa. On election day, Kerry barely carried the state over President George Bush. The results in Wisconsin were nearly identical to the results from 4 years earlier when Al Gore squeaked by Bush, and the 2020 presidential election when Joe Biden had a similarly narrow victory in the Badger State against Donald Trump, and we'll go into that in a different tab. As of 2020, this is the last time that Wisconsin failed to back the overall winner of the Electoral College, and thus the state is tied with Michigan and Pennsylvania for the longest streak of supporting the national winner up to the present day. Wow. Interesting. This was also only the third time since 1960, after 2000 and 1988, that it would vote for the losing candidate. Bush is to date the only presidential candidate to win 2 terms in office without carrying Wisconsin at least once, as well as the most recent Republican to win without the state. So what I'm hearing here, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm just going to say it sounds like people in Wisconsin tend, and of course Wisconsin is a battleground state, I think it always has been, although I subconsciously thought it always voted Republican, but that's obviously not the case by a long shot. It sounds like Wisconsin, people that are in Wisconsin, they are that middle of the road, like we are going to figure, like we're going to decide the presidency almost. Until 2020, this was the last time Wisconsin voted for a different candidate than neighboring Iowa. Both cases, Iowa voted Republican while Wisconsin voted Democrat. All right, so if we take a look here, we have George W. Bush, John Kerry, popular vote, 1,489,504, 1,478,120. Kerry had 49.7%, Bush had 49.3%. Isn't that just fucking crazy how it can be that close with that many people voting? My God. Here's the county results. Let's take a look at precinct. Yeah, so I'm right around, I think we're right around here for Waukesha, and we'll get into that. We can go, looks like everybody was looking at toss-ups. Results, sure. Ralph Nader was the independent runner. So here's all the counties. Let's take a look here. Dane County, that's somewhat near, I believe, to Waukesha. You got Dodge, that's our neighbor. Dodge is going to, God, that even surprises me, 37% in Dodge. Dodge can be very, very rural. I am being awakened here on this episode with everybody, on this live stream. Eau Claire, College Town, 54-44, Fond du Lac, 36-62. Jefferson, that's another neighbor to Waukesha. Looks like they're pretty close. Jefferson's going to have more cities, but looks like they do squeak out with Republicans at 56, Democrats at 42. And then Juneau, interesting story about Juneau I won't get into here, but that is actually surprising that it goes 52-46. That is so rural. My God. But we don't need to keep going. And, Milwaukee. Oh, that's why I know Dane. Dane is where Madison is. Duh. Milwaukee, 61-37. Man, this is interesting how it's not like a... And this is the theme that I'm starting to see here, is that when, LA County always votes liberal, or my vote doesn't matter, or whatever, you think it's like a 90-10 blowout. But even in a place like Milwaukee that's heavily liberal, you got 61-37. You have a 15-point flip, and that flips the whole thing. 15 points. Jeez. Anyways, don't need to go into, I don't want this to go too long. So Waukesha, you got the 67% to the 31%. So 2/3, similar to the Oconomowoc breakdown that we saw earlier. 67% Republican, 31% Democrat. Waukesha goes Republican. Now we have 2004 in California. Kerry wins this. Took place, blah, blah, blah. California was won by Democratic nominee by, again, so look, by a 9.95% margin of victory. Sure, California has been voting liberal for a while, but 10%, that doesn't sound like a lot. Prior to the election, all 12 news organizations considered this as a state Kerry would win, or otherwise considered as a safe blue state. Republican presidential candidates have not taken California's electoral votes since Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, in his victory over Michael Dukakis in 1988. Bush would become the first and only Republican to win 2 terms in the White House without winning California at least once. With its okay. This is the only election since 1880 in which the Republican nominee won the nationwide popular vote without California. The only time since 1976 that it voted for the popular vote loser, and the only time ever that a Republican president has won re-election without winning California. That last one's pretty interesting. This is also the only time since its statehood that a presidential candidate was elected to 2 terms of the presidency without winning the state either time. Wow. And then I guess this kind of gets into the foreshadowing. As of 2020 presidential election, this is the last time a Republican presidential candidate received more than 40% of the vote in California. Okay. Where the margin of victory was in single digits, and where the Democratic Party failed to obtain at least 60% of the vote. Bush remains the last Republican candidate to win the following counties in a presidential election: Fresno, Merced, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Joaquin, San Luis Obispo, San Juan Ventura, and... Wait, Bush remains the last Republican to win the following counties in a Really? So we don't even have, like, San Luis Obispo or San Diego anymore? Wow. Shows what I know. And also the last candidate of any party to win Butte County by a majority. This was also the only time since 1960 that California voted for a different presidential candidate than nearby New Mexico. It also remains the last presidential election that a Republican won more than a third of the vote in Los Angeles County, and also the last time that the gap between the Republican and Democrat candidates was less than 2 million votes. You get thrown so many different, like, random, since 1881 without the popular vote, and then so they all kind of blend together. You're not going to remember any of these, it sounds like, but hope. Los Angeles 63% to 35 for the Republican, so 1/3, 2/3. And then we have San Diego went Republican 52 to 46. Okay. And now we come to 2020, and this is where we're going to wrap up here. These last two, we've been going on for quite a bit of time now. The 2020 United States presidential election in Wisconsin was held on Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. Republicans incumbent Donald Trump, running mate Mike Pence, blah, blah, blah. The 2020 Democratic National Convention was scheduled to be held at the Fisher Forum in Milwaukee, but it was moved to the nearby Wisconsin Center due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Polls in Wisconsin in the lead up to Election Day showed a clear Biden lead, averaging in the high single digits. Prior to Election Day, most news organizations considered that state was leaning towards Biden. Wisconsin was ultimately won by Biden by a narrow 0.63 margin over Trump, who had won it in 2016 by 0.77% against Hillary Clinton. Look at that. Every one we've looked at for Wisconsin is under a 1% change. That's just crazy. However, Biden carried the state with a slightly higher margin, larger margin than Al Gore, John Kerry in either 2000 and 2004, respectively. Once again, Trump massively outperformed his polling average, which had Biden up 8.4 points in the state, but it was not enough to win it. Trump held his own in counties in northern Wisconsin, also in the Wow counties. So Trump massively outperformed his polling average. I think that's always been Trump's sort of story in both elections, was that he's always outperforming the polls, even though he lost in 2020. Maybe we'll have an episode about the 2020 election, now that YouTube has lightened their policies over voter fraud and things of that nature. But so why did Trump massively outperform his polling average? Some people believe, well, that's just when people are taking surveys, they don't want to admit that they're voting for Trump. I think that might be some of it. I also think that Republicans tend to have a higher turnout of actually voting, so I think that that's also a factor as well. And then also, who is taking these surveys? I remember one time I was reached out to by a survey group it was just a random call on my phone while I was at Gold's Gym in Venice, years ago. God, that must have been 4 years ago at this point, something like that, 5 years ago. And I didn't really even know if it was legitimate or not, but I figured, fuck it, let's just go through this. And it was very boring. I feel like the type of people that do this are the people that have this sort of time to do it. Basically, people that are generally my age, doing what I'm trying to do, trying to stay busy. They're not the ones that are doing these surveys, so you always got to kind of watch out for that. Biden won the highest vote share for a Democrat in Waukesha County at 38.8% since Jimmy Carter in Waukesha County. Biden won the highest vote for a Democrat in Waukesha County at 38.8% since Jimmy Carter in 1976. Wow, they are just throwing my county under the bus right there. 38.8%. Come on, guys, what's going on with you? I do hear that the demographics have been shifting in Waukesha County, so that probably is what the correlation is. Trump carried Brown County, which is Republican-leaning but competitive, though Biden won the city of Green Bay and improved on Clinton's margin in the county at large by about 3.7%. Biden won back Sauk County, a county in the driftless region of southwestern Wisconsin. Biden also flipped Door County, which has voted for the winning candidate in each election since 1980, save for 1992. On November 18th, Trump announced that he would request a recount in Milwaukee County and Dane County. On November 29th, both counties reaffirmed Biden's victory, giving him a net gain of 87 votes over Trump. With Ohio, Florida, and Iowa backing the losing candidate for the first time since 1960, 1992, and 2005, this election established Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania as the states with the longest bellwether streak still in effect today. The last time any of them voted against the winning candidate was 2004, when all three voted for losing Democrat John Kerry. Wisconsin voted 3.77% more Republican than the nation at large. This is the first time since 2004 that Wisconsin did not vote for the same candidate as neighboring Iowa. So we already... Looks like there's a lot more data here than in the 2004. We're just going to look at Waukesha County. 38.77%, whereas 59.57%. Yeah, so little close for comfort, but that's still a good lead. You know, you're looking at a 20-point lead for Republicans, so that's good. Yeah, 20.80. And then our final tab, and then we can wrap this up. 2020 presidential election in California obviously goes for Joe Biden. California, she was a junior senator. California was one of 6 states where Trump received more percentage of the two-party vote than he did in 2016. This election also marked the first time since 2004 that the Republican candidate won more than 1 million votes in Los Angeles County due to increased turnout statewide during COVID. California is considered a safe blue state due to significant concentrations of Democrat voters in large urban regions such as the San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Diego. As predicted, Biden easily carried California Election Day, earning 63.5% of the vote and a margin of 29.2% over Trump. Biden earned the highest percentage of the vote in the state for any candidacy since FDR in 1936, although Biden's margin of victory was slightly smaller than Hillary's, making it one of just 7 states in which Trump improved on his 2016 margin. Biden became the first candidate in any race for any office in U.S. history to win more than 10 million votes in a single state. We'll talk about that in a different episode. While Trump also received the most votes a Republican has ever received in any state in any race since the country's founding, even narrowly besting his vote total in Texas, a state that he won. So, yeah, I mean, Biden's vote margin was the largest vote margin for a presidential candidate in a singular state. Per exit polls by Edison Research, Biden dominated key demographic constituent. I'm not even going to say that right now. In the state, including Latinos at 75, African Americans at 82, Asian Americans at 76, that's surprising, and union households with 63. Post-election analysis by Cook Political Report showed Trump made inroads with some Asian Americans, there we go, particularly Vietnamese voters in Orange County, there we go, and Filipino American voters in San Mateo. Biden flipped Butte County and Inyo County, interesting, into the Democratic column, which had not voted Democrat since 2008 and 1964. Respectively, Biden's victory in Orange County was only the second time a Democrat carried the county since 1936. Yeah, that's really a shame. As well as only the 4th time, and that's just California just going more liberal. That's just indoctrination right there. As well as only the 4th time in the country's history. In contrast, while he improved his total vote share by nearly 3 percentage points, Trump did not flip any counties, and his main regions of strength came from Republican strongholds in Gold County, Shasta, Cascade, and parts of the Central Valley. California Secretary of State Alex Padilla certified the results on December 4th and took Harris's seat in the Senate upon her resignation to become vice president. California was one of 5 states in the nation in which Biden's victory margin was larger than 1 million raw votes, the others being New York, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Illinois. Over 5 million votes of Biden's 7 million vote lead nationwide were California votes. and we'll just finish it up here. Los Angeles County, 71% Democrat, 26% Republican. Well, that was a lot longer than I thought it would be, but lot of information there. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you. Feel free to like and or subscribe. So a couple of key takeaways is that Oconomowoc is not as Republican as I thought it was, and Santa Monica, although liberal, is not as liberal as I assumed it was either. And these margin of victories are smaller than one would think, just based upon sort of the emotional rationalizations that you come to from hearing things in the news. Oh, California's a blue state, or oh this, or oh that, and it becomes this black and white 0 versus 1 dichotomy, and really there's a lot more nuance to it. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So I appreciate everybody for paying attention, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you.